Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 56, and basically you're watching two guys trying to work through all the technical issues it takes to get this show on the air. George's webcam died. His current video cam is going up and down and all over the place. We're having trouble. His dog keeps knocking himself against the desk. It's been a long time trying to shoot episode 56. And you got that George James Bond thing going on there. I like that look you got going, George.
Well, I've been cultivating the Blofeld look for years, but if James Bond's right for me, I'll try that too.
I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And today's November 9th, 2012.
Okay, we have exciting news from Canterbury, England, over the pond, and I have Peter Old here to talk about it. In short, there's a new Archbishop of Canterbury elect, and his name is Justin Welby, and he's going to serve as the 105th Archbishop. Now, all the world's been, a talk about this. We broke the news last week on AnglicanTV. Twitter's on fire. The blogs are calling this new guy everywhere from the spawn of Satan to the next most holiest man in the world. There's a whole spectrum of reaction going on here. What is the reaction from the Church of England?
Overwhelmingly positive. Thumbs up all round. I've been observing the Twitter sphere all day, and I haven't seen anything negative written about him. It's an amazing response. It is, a meteoric rise to power for this man. 2 years ago, he was a cathedral dean in Liverpool, and now he is about to become the next occupant of Lambeth Palace. It's amazing.
Well, it's a Cinderella story, and I'm wondering if he's really chosen for his skills as a person who works in the business world more than his education and acumen like you would normally find in an archbishop.
Well, it's a combination of things, isn't it? Yes, he was schooled at Eton, which is the top private school here in the country. It's the same school that David Cameron went to. He got his degree at Cambridge. He then went into the oil industry, spent a few years there. He left in his late 20s, early 30s, when he was running the finance department for an oil exploration firm. Having worked in Western Africa, he left to do seminary training, and then he worked in a parish. He moved to Coventry, was at the cathedral there with the Reconciliation Project, which goes on from there. Worked out again in Western Africa, but this time obviously for the church. Moved to Liverpool as the dean of the cathedral there. Managed to turn its finances around and to build up the congregation again, and only a year ago was promoted to become the fourth most important man in the Church of England as the Bishop of Durham.
Now, he became Bishop of Durham November 26th of 2011. It's not even a year later. He's the Archbishop of Canterbury. And I think that's because there's such a crisis in the church that they found somebody who's been successful in what he does, and he's been able to overcome every challenge before him. Most interesting today was his press conference at Lambeth. How did he start that out?
Oh, it's fantastic. He started it with a word of prayer, and there was a wonderfully beautiful moment where he said, let's all be quiet and pray. And there was a journalist in the front row who was kind of ruffling papers and trying to take one final shot, and he basically gave him a stare like that, like sort of headmaster scare. And then, having prayed, he said, well, welcome to the worst kept secret since the last cabinet reshuffle. I mean, an incredibly personable, humorous, intelligent, and yet humble man. It's, what, Kevin, it's really exciting.
Well, it is, because this is not the normal type of person you find in the role of Archbishop or Primate anywhere in the communion. Maybe a Peter Jensen is of that evangelical variety, but I find a lot of uniqueness in Justin Welby. I mean, he's not even a doctor.
Yeah, you know, he's been shaped spiritually by two formative experiences in his life. Firstly, he was worshiping in his 30s at Holy Trinity Brompton in London, where the Alpha Course comes from. One of the main charismatic evangelical churches in the Church of England. But secondly, when his first child, a daughter, was just 8 months old, she was killed in a car accident, and that has fundamentally shaped his whole kind of ministry, what he thinks he's doing. It was one of the reasons why he left the commercial world to go into seminary. You know, he's a completely different man from the kind of institutional people who work their way up through sort of archdeacon, suffragan bishop, and trying to climb a greasy pole. It's almost as though at every stage in his career he's wanted to throw grease onto the pole so as not to rise up. You know, and it's like, you know, he's a man who was surprised he was called to be Dean of Liverpool Cathedral, let alone to get to wear purple.
Right. So now he's wearing purple again. March 21st in 2013, he will be ascended to the role of the Archbishop of Canterbury. At that point, he has to address big issues within the church.
Yeah.
Okay, we have the women bishops issue, which he, at the press conference, said he's going to vote for and encourage others to vote for. Not a word that a lot of people in England want to hear, but some rejoice at that. He said he's going to rethink the lesbian gay issue within the church, and he affirms the state's right to define how two people cohabitate. That was rather interesting as well in the press conference.
Yeah.
So is he saying these things to disarm his opponents? Or, you know, what is the progress he's going about here?
Well, let's take those in turn. Firstly, women bishops. That vote's going to happen now in 2 weeks' time. It's not yet certain that it will pass. So he's got two scenarios which he will have to face. Either the vote passes, in which case he has to help frame a code of practice for traditionalists, which is going to look after them and appease them. Or it fails, and that may yet happen, in which case he's going to have to contend with a whole lot of people who are very bitter and very angry that everything that they've been working for the last 10 or 15 years has fallen apart. Either way, it's a tough job. But, you know, he's got these reconciliation skills. He's done it in his commercial life. He's done it in his spiritual life. He comes from that stable in Coventry Cathedral of people who have learned how to help people come together. So, you know, if there is one man to do it, it's him. Human sexuality. It's very interesting exactly to listen to the precise words he says. He affirms the government's right to create institutions which help people live better. But all that's saying is basically civil partnerships are a good thing. So let's have civil partnerships and marriage as separate things. And, you know, he says he's going to, you know, think again through the sexuality issues. But so far on that, he's come across as being fairly conservative. So, you know, the whole Church of England is going through a rethinking process at the moment. And it's very likely that the outcome of that will be fairly conservative. So, you know, it's okay, like plenty of us are doing, to sit and think through again and to come out with the same conclusion. So there's a lot of sort of pro-LGBT people who are thinking, oh, this is excellent, exciting. I wonder whether they might be disappointed by what actually happens.
Well, it's interesting because he's a reconciler, but he's willing, excuse me, he's willing to take sides. I'm a reconciler, but I do choose to endorse women bishops.
Yeah.
Okay, he's vocal in that term. Where Roland Williams would have given you 14 paragraphs, and you would not have known what he was going to choose at the end of those 14 paragraphs. Here, there's a pretty definitive what I'm going to do and encourage others to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and he's got great management experience and leadership experience. And you know what? The Church of England needs it. At the moment, we've got Lambeth Palace running as one operation and Church House running as a different one. And often kind of the principal civil servants going kind of like that. It needs someone to kind of come in and shake and say, this is now how we're going to do things.
Well, it's been my opinion he needs to clean house. Now,
Yeah, absolutely.
does he have the authority to go in there and fire Canon Kenneth Kiernan and start and start taking? Well, I'm being serious. I mean, if you want to be successful, you take away the things that have stopped previous success.
Well,
And
I'm not suggesting that Kenneth Kieran needs to go.
mhm,
That might be your thought. He does have the authority to do it,
good.
but often, archbishops have tried to rule by consensus and so on. But you know what? See where that's got us.
Yeah, and, I mean, it, he has an interesting track record because not a lot of his thoughts have reached paper.
No.
He doesn't have that track record. And my thinking was, well, when he was in the interview process, did the interviewer say, "What do you think about the crisis in the communion?" And he says, "What crisis?" Did that get him elected? I mean, what answers did he provide to the Crown Nomination Committee that really, got him past the other characters that were being interviewed?
I have no idea, but
Yeah,
whatever answers they were, it seemed to impress the CNC.
sure.
When when they had like the second round and they started interviewing people, he was apparently the outstanding candidate. We've got two things that he's written in the last year, which have been talked about on the internet. One of them is sort of domestic matters here in the Church of England, fresher expressions, which is basically doing church in the 21st century. He's a big fan of that. He introduced a service, October the 31st service in Liverpool Cathedral called Night of the Living Dead, where somebody bursts out of a coffin
Wow.
to symbolize the resurrection.
Cool.
Now I can see some people, tearing their hair to that, but he's not afraid to do deeply orthodox things in a new way.
Hmm.
So he's a big fan of that. What I've also read today is a speech he gave to the Tech House of Bishops
Yes, yeah.
sort of in sort of March time, and a lot of people said, "Oh, he's just another appeaser and so on." But read very carefully what he says there. I've realised he says that tech isn't monochrome. Well, it's not. There's still
Well, yeah.
pockets of orthodoxy left, along with rabid apostate liberal heretics. Who are not Christian in the slightest. And then he says stuff like, "I don't agree with everything." So he's trying to be conciliar, but the difference between him and Rowan Williams in his conciliarity is that at the same time he says, "And these are our differences." Yeah, I want to be your friend, but these are our differences, and
Now,
let's not push them under the carpet.
over here in America, some bloggers have really, well, I would say been unfair to the incoming archbishop with some of their comments. What is the comments of the blogosphere that you see that are interesting?
Over here in England, it's mainly positive. It's just so much excitement, a sense that the Church of England has avoided just picking a sort of party apparatchik. Someone who's like a middle churchman who's just one job to the next, and has gone for somebody who is exciting, who's a great media creator. He's a guy who goes into his first public press conference and jokes about the key difference between him and Rowan Williams is that he owns a razor blade. A razor blade. I mean, this is a guy who you could go down the pub with and talk about West Wing, because that's what he quoted at his press conference. The worry is if you go down the pub with Rowan Williams, he's going to bore you to death with his latest academic thesis.
Okay, now there are interesting contrasts between the Rowan Williams, the archbishop before him, and the new upcoming archbishop. What is more unique in my mind, other than contrasting them together, is the reaction now that the world is going to have, not just the Church of England. They're all initially going to say, "Great to have you, hate to be in your shoes." How does he take on the dual role now of reconciliation with the Anglican Communion? Which let's be up front here. The Anglican Communion is broken; it's torn apart, and there are almost dual entities with the GAVCON movement and the old Anglican movement.
Yeah. Well, he's got a clear choice now. hasn't he? Rowan Williams has skillfully managed to do nothing, and in doing nothing, back his preferred side. Yeah. He, Justin Welby has a choice. He can either carry on with this sort of, in Darberish kind of talking to each other, but not dealing with the actual fundamental issues of doctrine, in which case the communion will fall apart. It will do. When you read the statement by the GAFCON primates today, where they basically welcome him and give him notice. So either he can carry on as before, or he can step in, make a firm decision, use some of those powers that he has as ABC. We are 5 or so years away from the invites going out to the next Lambeth conference. Well, you know what? He can decide not to invite all the tech bishops. He can send them letters and ask them, where do you stand on these issues, and not invite them. Same with the Canadian bishops and some of the New Zealand ones. He can act. The question is, will he? Well, let's wait and see. Let's not prejudge. Let's actually wait and see what he does.
Now, there's probably about another 2 to 3 months before he has been isolated and separated by Lambeth Palace, where you can't reach him. Okay, they're going to lock him down, and they're going to start setting agendas for his meetings, and like they did with the ACC 15 in New Zealand, where they ran every part of the communication and response of that meeting. Now, is that something he's going to put up with, or is he going to be blind to it? I think Rowan Williams was blind to what the palace was doing on his behalf.
What was very interesting when he was talking about his experience in Western Africa working for the oil company in a previous interview that he did with Giles Fraser, was he said, look, I was very young when I was out there, and I was naive, and now I realize some of the things that were going on around me, which perhaps I didn't notice at first. Now, that's got a double meaning. Yes, he's telling you about what's going to happen in the past, but he's also saying, look, I understand how the world works. I understand that people say one thing and do something else. You know what? He's got a great reputation. He's currently on a parliamentary committee, because obviously he's a member of the House of Lords. He's on a parliamentary committee looking into some of the banking scandals, the LIBOR rate fixing scandal, and so on. And he's really impressed his fellow MPs and Lords by his really incisive questioning, and not letting people just give simple answers, but really drilling down and picking people apart and saying, what do you exactly mean? Explain that, and so on. So he is forensic in his detail. He's not going to let people push him around. Awesome.
Peter, we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Oh, it's going to be great.
So keep tuned to Anglican Unscripted. We'll be talking more about the new Archbishop. Hopefully I can get a plane ticket and hop out there for the enthronement.
That would be cool.
It'd be a lot of fun. All right. And you can get me front row tickets because you got the collar thing going on, right?
I'll try. I think they're in very short supply.
Oh, boy. Thank you very much, Peter. I'll catch you next week.
God bless, Kevin.
Okay, everybody got to see the momentous occasion here on Anglican Unscripted. Peter Old was wearing his clerics. Okay, it wasn't just that. He got to announce the new election here of the Archbishop of Canterbury-elect, Justin Welby. He got to talk about how that would affect the Church of England and some of the issues he's going to have to deal with Lambeth, the Church of England, and London, and all that goes on in that microcosm. George and I are going to talk about the bigger microcosm, how he has to relate to the Anglican Communion. He has to deal with GAFCON, the Episcopal Church, the African Church, the Asian Church, not just the polity of England. George, what's the first thing an African is going to ask the new Archbishop?
The first thing they're going to ask is, do you believe?
Sure.
I can remember you and I sat down with Greg Venables in Alexandria, Egypt, and we talked about faith, we talked about Christianity, we talked about what he believed and what he believed the American church believed. And one of the things Greg Venables said was that Catherine Jefferts Schori is not a Christian the way I understand Christians to be.
Sure.
And that basic question, does Justin Welby believe? Does he truly believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for Justin Welby's sins and paid the penalty for his brokenness?
Which is interesting because Justin Welby doesn't have the normal profile resume of a bishop in the Church of England. Justin Welby is what we call a newbie. He's brand new to the job, and he started out not as a church person going from college into the seminaries. He went into the oil business.
In a way, Justin Welby is from outside the establishment of the Church of England, but he is so establishment, it's almost funny. Justin Welby, his mother was Winston Churchill's secretary, okay? You can't get men. And he went to Eton as a young boy. And who were the other Etonians in the British establishment these days? Oh, the Prime Minister, the Mayor of London, Prince Harry, Prince William. Well, he went to Eton, he went to Cambridge, he went to work for a French oil firm, came back to London and worshipped at the church of another Etonian, Nicky Gumbel.
Sure.
He came to faith in Jesus Christ while he was at Holy Trinity, Brompton Road. He's the first Alpha Archbishop. Well, we really should be technical. He's not the ABC yet. He's the ABCD,
right.
Archbishop of Canterbury designate. Justin Welby is the new ABCD, and his faith is that of the Alpha Evangelical Low Church movement. And if everything that he has publicly said in the past is true, and the Africans are counting on that, it's going to start pretty well because the African church, the Asian church is going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he believes.
Yeah, and that's right. And that's the starting place. And I hate to use a Star Trek reference, but when Bones wanted to talk to Spock about death, Spock said, well, you will have to die first, like I did, in order to talk about death. Well, if you want to have a relationship with a Christian, it helps that you're a Christian. It's a good starting place, a good place to firm up a relationship, to know you're on the same page when you're talking about Jesus Christ and how the church should work. Now, Alpha is an operational ministry in evangelistic ministry, started by Nicky Gumbel at Holy Trinity, and it's amazing that a person could go from coming to faith at that into the leadership of the church in 15 short years.
He was ordained in 1992, so it's 20 years.
20 years, okay.
He's been a bishop for 11 months, 12 months. And there's a lot to this guy. He's not dumb.
No.
You don't become a successful oil executive by being dumb. And one of the first questions he was asked at the press conference today is, will you be marked by your education? Which is sort of a snarky way of saying, because you're an old Etonian, just like all these other leaders, are you basically an upper-class twit?
Sure.
And no, Justin Welby's not an upper-class twit. But the second question the overseas church is going to ask is, after you believe, is, are your words going to match, are your actions going to match your words?
Sure.
Can we trust you?
And that's the most important things. It didn't take too long watching Rowan Williams and other bishops in the church around the world who say one thing and do the other. Rowan Williams is famous for always saying he will hold the Episcopal Church accountable. He will follow through with the primates meetings and all the statements from Kigali, from Dar al-Salam, from over there in Britain. I mean, there's been so many primates meetings I can't even think of them all off the top of my head. He said, yes, we'll do this. And he never did.
Mm-hmm. And that lack of trust toward the end is still going on because
Yes.
Ron Williams is still going to be there for a few more months.
Yeah.
The trust is gone. We saw that at the ACC meeting in Auckland that just ended Wednesday. The Nigerians and the Kenyans released a statement saying, look, they have no faith in the Anglican Consultative Council, and we really aren't comfortable with the way the Archbishop of Canterbury is elected. If a British politician is going to choose the leader of this Christian church, we think there are problems at that. Well, sometimes God works in mysterious ways, even through prime ministers of Great Britain.
Well, absolutely. Winston Churchill is a perfect example. Winston Churchill was a man for a mission at the right time. If you ask me, placed there by God to stop the Nazis. And he did that. Good looking? No. He had a funny accent, spoke, had an intriguing speaking presence, but he knew what to do, when to do it, and how to encourage the people of Britain who were being bombed every night by the Germans to fight back and let everybody know that the war stops here. We're taking back Europe. And what an instrument Winston Churchill can play. Can Justin Welby play that as the Archbishop, taking back the faith of the Anglican Communion?
Peter Mullen, who's a retired clergyman who has a column in the Telegraph in London, basically went through Welby's resume. And if you look on Anglican Ink, you can see his complete biography if you want to know where he was every step of his life from birth till today. We've got it up on the website. But Peter Mullen asked the question, does Welby, in addition to all of these achievements in civil life, in church life, in social life, in family life, he's married, has 6 children, one of whom died in infancy, does he have courage? Mm-hmm. Does he have the courage to act upon his faith and act upon his convictions, or will he be another Church of England squish? Go along, get along, let's not rock the boat, and let's mark our time until the end till we collect a pension.
And that's interesting because he doesn't come from the institutional background. He comes from an oil background where he had to make money for his employer. It was based on profit. And he seems to have taken some of that acumen into the institution we call the church by working with a program of reconciliation when he was the dean.
He was Dean of Liverpool before he became Bishop of Durham last year. And before he was at Liverpool, he was at Coventry and was involved with the Cross of Nails program, which is a fellowship of reconciliation. Coventry Cathedral was flattened by the Germans in the Second World War, and out of that, after the war, the cathedral made a mission of reconciling those deeply opposed by war, ideology, race, color, creed. So reconciliation is something that Welby understands, or we hope he understands.
Sure. Well, and that leads to the questions here, because the church, at some point, the GAFCON people are going to ask these questions. Does he believe that this church is in crisis? Now, he's been to America. He's written about a meeting at the House of Bishops. He knows, from what I can read, that there is a crisis. And the next question is, there seems to be a desire amongst the Episcopal Church and the rest of the world to reconcile in some way, matter or form. Can there be reconciliation without repentance, which is what the Episcopal Church leadership desires? And how will he work in that framework?
Reconciliation, a lot of what we see in church speak and reconciliation basically is white self-hatred. Not
Yes.
hating your wife, but because I'm from a white, privileged, upper-class background, therefore I must hate myself. Mm-hmm. And if Welby is that sort of reconciliation guy, folks, it's over. In other words, we don't need more white guilt out of the English.
Right.
If he's someone who believes that reconciliation includes repentance, includes amendment of life, and includes the firm commitment to lead a life fully in line with the dictates of Jesus Christ, then our church has hope. But if he's one of these glad handlers who tries to sort of like shove together coalitions of different people so we can get through legislation somehow through the Lambeth Conference, what's the point, folks? We've had politicians, we've had academics, we need Christians.
Absolutely. And we're to the point now where we saw exactly what at ACC 15 in New Zealand, where they avoided conflict, they avoided the crisis. They said there's nothing going on here. What crisis? And if he went to the interview with the Crown Nomination Committee and they asked him what he would do about the crisis in an Anglican church, and he said, what crisis? And that's what got him into the job, it's over. However, if he presented them with a couple-step plan of taking care of this, and they were enamored by that, then he is the Winston Churchill for the Anglican Communion at this time. He's going to serve quite a few years, George.
Yeah, he could be here for 2 Lambeth conferences, at least 15 years. Mm-hmm. For me, one of the things that I look forward, which I hope he does, is that he cleans house at Lambeth Palace and at the Anglican Consultative Council.
Yeah.
See, it was the bureaucracy, the staff, the lawyers, the advisors that toppled the walls of Lambeth Palace on top of Rowan Williams. Rowan Williams' heart really was in the right place, but for reasons I still don't understand, this great brain was hamstrung by these midgets running around him telling, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. So guess what? Nothing got done.
No, and it's remarkable what a bad staff can do for a good leader, or what a bad staff can do for a mediocre leader. You are part of your staff, and you go to any of the great corporations, GE, Apple, I go down the whole list. Somewhere in there, there's a secretary who gets the things done that her boss keeps forgetting to do. And I can, my business operates because of the people that I employ. Their boss is absent-minded. All he is a forethinker and methodical. They do all the work. And you need that at Lambeth Palace, people who can get things done, not find reasons not to do it.
Now, there is hope. The Church of England hired a fellow named Aaron Aurora to be its director of communications.
Yeah.
And they treated him very shabbily, especially over this Crown Nominations Commission business, but basically making him look foolish. But there's somebody there who can make the Archbishop's public pronouncements and his persona relevant and crisp and not the sludge that we've been getting for years. He just needs to assemble a team to carry out his vision.
Sure.
Rather than have a team fight his vision or force their vision on the Archbishop.
And I say there's hope too. And I give Justin Welby, as we finish this piece, the benefit of the doubt. First of all, Lambeth Press put out the video of his announcement this morning within hours. I've been begging them to put out the statements from Rowan Williams way back at Lambeth when he had those private meetings under the tent. The communications office is not video literate. They don't understand the power of video, the power of getting the message across. And to be able to see and watch the new Archbishop D,
ABCD,
take his position and answer the questions of the press and make his initial statement, I'm encouraged. Now, what is your role in this, Anglican Church? To be in prayer. He's a leader. And we pray for him and we give him the benefit of the doubt, because there's no other way the Holy Spirit can work within this without engaging the Holy Spirit in this.
God still is in charge. The Archbishop of Canterbury is a servant of the Lord. And we need to pray that he carries out his service, the trust that he has been given, faithfully. Be a good steward and a good shepherd.
George, there's another important story here in America this week, and I hate to leave out the foreign audience, but we're going to talk about the election.
Sure.
We asked voters last week to vote for that guy, and in reality, that guy won, because you got to choose who you voted for. That's something very unique here to America. Democracy is unique, it's new, and what it doesn't come down to the polls. It doesn't come down to really what the candidates are selling or not selling. It comes down to the turnout at the polls. Who can get their people to turn out and vote for them? Now, in reality, many more people probably supported Romney's ideas than Obama's. But guess what? They didn't come out and pull the lever. And if they're not going to come out and pull the lever, that's that.
One of the things that has been really fun, Forget Religion, one of the sites I write for, I read a lot of the European press. Mm-hmm. And reading some of the news analyses that's coming out of Europe, it's just dreadful. First off, it's way too soon to say this is reason why this happened or that happened. As of our filming, my state, Florida, still hasn't counted all the ballots yet. There's a few sheriffs up north are waiting to see who's going to pay them to release the ballot boxes, whether the Democrats or the Republicans. But one of the things that we can tell right now is that 7 million fewer white voters voted in 2012 than they did in 2008. Mm-hmm. And Romney, of those who did vote, Romney won about 61% of the white vote. And if the McCain voters had shown up and voted for Romney, Romney would have won.
No, we'd still have the tie in Florida. Then we'd
Well,
relive
that's right.
2000. Then we'd find out you don't have Chads anymore. And then, everybody would freak out. That's the Supreme Court. Okay. I mean, it's never simple.
Minority voting was strong.
Yeah.
But and the Obama administration did an excellent job in getting its base out to vote. The Romney administration decided to the Romney campaign took the high road, talked about ideas, talked about grown-up subjects like the debt and deficit, and the Obama campaign took another tack, and in the world of retail politics, Obama won.
Yeah, I mean, he won fair and square because he did play by the rules. You can't complain. Now, if you want to complain, and here's the first thing I can see Republicans do: we need to run Hispanic candidates. Our candidates have to have the last name of Mendez from now on, and all these different ideas. And if that's what you think, you really got it wrong. You really need to embrace the community that is socially conservative, church-going. If you ticked off the top 5 ideals of what a conservative is, a Hispanic person is going to say, yes, that's me. And what the problem is, you aren't in there educating and defending your ideas. You're letting somebody else define you. And you're spending too much time trying to define the candidate.
One of the little songs that we hear sung at this point is that morality and religious voting and social issues, that's all dead. It's a secular world, that's won. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look, though, at the difference between the Romney vote and single-issue votes like the death penalty in California, the liberals, including the 8 bishops of the Episcopal Church in California, said, vote for Proposition 34 to ban the death penalty, because that's the good liberal thing to do. Obama creamed Romney in California. Guess what? The death penalty has been reaffirmed in California. Gay marriage was brought up in several states. And though Romney was creamed in Maryland and Maine, and Washington State, where it passed, the margin where gay marriage passed, where the supporters spent 4 times the amount of money in ads than opponents did, was very, very narrow. Mm-hmm. So moral issues outran Romney every single place that it was brought up.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the fact that Romney was too moral, because the moral issues all did much better.
Yeah, and they do. And when you really take a look at this election, you just have to figure out that your message wasn't defined by you. Romney wasn't defined by Romney. Romney got defined by Obama. Mm-hmm. And when you let your opponent define you, you're going to lose. And that also works in the church life. When the opposition is allowed to define us as homophobic, as haters and stuff like that, and we don't answer that, that's the message that goes out. All the time in the secular press, the headline is, homophobic church does whatever.
I went to the Religion News Writers Conference last month up in Washington, D.C., and where I mixed with all the people who write for the different, the major newspapers, the wire services. And I also spent a lot of time with church people. And one of the things that church people tell me is that, why are these writers so unfair to me? And the sad story is, because they think you're some Neanderthal right-wing hick from the sticks. If you're a conservative Christian from South Carolina, you must be a Confederate of some sort. That's the mindset. So that you start off behind the 8 ball, if you're a conservative Christian, especially in the South, in the minds of the media. And that's because you've allowed other people to find that you're somebody who's against something rather than somebody who's for something.
Yeah. And that's what happens. Perspectives are all out of whack. And let's close this up here. And I'm going to put something in perspective for you. The next morning, all the newspapers said, $2 billion spent on election is too much. Oh my God, we wasted so much money and we have the same result. $2 billion. Now, not one of these newspaper articles happened to mention that every single day America borrows, did I say million? It's billion, 2 billion.
You said
I'm not sure, because it's a lot of zeros after my B. So $2 billion. None of these newspaper articles happen to mention that every day from China, America borrows $4 billion. The perspective is all wrong. We are going in the wrong direction. There's no solution at hand. And all you're going to hear is hyperbole, because there's no way that these guys are going to work in Washington until it's too late. Once again, Obama is your leader. Pray for him. He is the leader of this nation. If you really want to know what it says in 1 Peter about what you're supposed to do with your nation and your leaders, it tells you. All right, I'll put the reference right here in 1 Peter. You're supposed to obey, be obedient, honor. It's part of your job as a Christian, unless it causes you to sin. George, I want to talk about another local story here. The Diocese of South Carolina. We've talked about it many times the last couple of weeks because a lot's been happening. And that's just the nature of our jobs, as we get to report on constantly going stories that should have died a long time ago. This should have died because legally the Episcopal Church has no business in South Carolina. The courts have all but said so. They've lost to the Supreme Court. They have no property rights. The Dennis Canon is dead in South Carolina. All the churches had quit claim deeds sent to them. So they are owned by the church. The diocese does not have any regard for the properties. However, the Episcopal Church always has something in their back pocket. And we learned this week what one of those are. One is dirty tricks, and I'll have you explain that in a minute. The other is pensions. Explain how the pension program works in the Episcopal Church, George.
The Episcopal Church has a civil service type pension, meaning it's a defined benefit. Mm-hmm. If you work for, I think it's 30 years or however number of years, upon your retirement, you get the average highest contribution of your highest 7 years. So if you make $100,000 the last 7 years, you get a proportion of $100,000, be it half or 2/3, whatever you come in on. Now, if you leave the ministry before you get to the 30-year mark, if that's the cutoff date, if you're there 29 years, 364 days, and you get kicked out in that last day, you don't come in at that full mark. Mm-hmm. So the pension, it's a defined benefit, and you can be kicked out, but you only get how much you've accrued based on their formulas at the point you're kicked out.
But deposed, a priest who's deposed still gets his pension, his earned pension.
Yeah, so that's why you can have some real crooks who are in prison. I can't think of which bishop is in prison right now, but there should be some.
Yes.
If they've served their 30 years, they can't touch the pension because it's earned fair and square, and it can't be taken away.
Okay, so let's go back to the dirty tricks. We've learned dirty tricks work well, but they may have a bad result, a la Richard Nixon. Apparently somebody is trying to represent themselves as the Diocese of South Carolina and managed to get a hold of the seal and sent out a mass letter to most of the clergy of the diocese saying, hey, come join us for a clergy day at such and such church. We're bringing in the bishop from East Tennessee, retired, and he's going to celebrate with us and give a sermon, and we'll just talk about what's happening in the diocese. Now, the problem is this wasn't founded or started or had any knowledge of the diocese.
There are one or two scenarios here. Either G. Gordon Liddy broke into the offices of the Diocese of South Carolina and committed a second-rate burglary, stealing the seal and the email address and the clergy listserv addresses, or a member of the clergy who is sympathetic to the national church forged the diocese name and seal on an invitation that invited the clergy to a conference 2 days before the special convention. And at this conference, they're having an out-of-state bishop come speak to them and preach and probably celebrate in an Episcopal church. And my hunch is that that's when the threats will come out. Sure. If you vote for this, you will see what happened to the guys in San Joaquin and Fort Worth and Pittsburgh who voted for secession. They got kicked out. That'll happen to you too. What's going to happen to your pension? You know, the national church could sue you in your vestry personally. Look what they did in Fort Worth, in San Joaquin, in Quincy, in Pittsburgh, and so on and so forth, in California. In other words, The actual legal position of the church vis-a-vis the Diocese of South Carolina is very weak. But the threat of litigation and the threat of docking a pension and the threat that something terrible is going to happen if you don't knuckle under is being made 2 days before the special meeting. That's a dirty trick.
It is a dirty trick, and actually there's mafia laws written into our federal code that are supposed to stop that type of thing. I can't think of the name of it right now. RICO.
Racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. Are you saying the Episcopal Church is a racketeered, influence, corrupt organization, Kevin?
Absolutely. I mean, no question about it. Not all of it, but certainly the leadership. And I'm going to be slandered. I'm going to get lawsuits are coming, and proving my point. There's laws to stop this, but this is just, we go back to dirty tricks. How can we get the clergy on our side? And one of them is to scare them. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it backfires. Luckily, Mark Lawrence and Joy Hunter and the other people in the offices of the diocese learned about this and were able to come out and put the right information forward. However, I don't believe for a second that this is going to be the last dirty trick.
Well, let's just stop for 1 second and say, suppose that you do believe, well, I fixed my earphone. Suppose, let's just say, there can be legitimate differences of opinion about the wisdom or the legality or even the morality of the actions taken by the Diocese of South Carolina and the General Convention of the Episcopal Church. You can agree in good faith. Mm-hmm. The problem, as I see it here, is that trying to start an alternative church by an action of bad faith, whatever grows out of that bad action, fruit of the poisonous tree, if you're going to start something based upon an evil act, the outcome, I don't think, would ever be blessed by God. In other words, you can have legitimate differences, but you should resolve them in a Christ-like manner, not resort to this trickery.
A lot of you may have thought that this week's episode was a Sesame Street because we did A, B, C, brought to you by the letter D, and we talked about lots of different things happening around the world. Great, exciting news for the first time in a long time in the church. We have a new Archbishop of Canterbury designate. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. A lot of stuff still happens here domestically. But we still want to be able to record every week, and we're having difficulty because George's camera went down. You see how he's all pale and blotchy? That's not George.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the confidence that you express of my personal grooming habit.
It's not George. It's his little webcam. We actually have some studio cameras we use, and we need to replace his because his died in the shooting we were going to do on Thursday 2 days ago. And so we need to replace that. It cost about $350, which I took out of my pocket and spent on a new camera. He's going to have it in a couple days, but is Anglican Unscripted going to be a ministry funded by Kevin Coulson's checkbook, which Mrs. Coulson doesn't want to hear, or is this going to be funded by the viewers? And we really need your help here. I put out a call last week to help with travel expenses to South Carolina. We got $50, and I don't want to sound like a complainer or a whiner, but if this is really something you enjoy, I would ask that you please click on the donate button. I realized last week it worked for the first time in a long time because somebody did donate, and I thank you for that. But we really need to get more audience participation. This isn't Pat Robertson or Jim and Tammy trying to move some money from one bank account to another to raise money. We have an honest need, and the Anglican TV and Anglican Unscripted don't operate for free. There are churches out there that can support us. There's clergy and laity, and we have thousands and thousands of viewers. And if you can spare $5 or $10 or $100 or whatever you can, please be a participant in our ministry. We need you to be a part, not just watchers, not just prayers, but fundraisers as well. George, what's happening this week in the news? We're going to do some follow-up stories on Anglican Inc. Lots of stuff there right now, right?
I think we've had 10 stories today on Anglican Inc., a lot of press statements. Mm-hmm. We're going to have as many stories again tomorrow and the next day as the news develops from the Archbishop of Canterbury. We have breaking news out of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. We had original news. See, Anglican Ink. has original news stories. We don't just rewrite what other newspapers saying. We actually go out and do original reporting and put out some of the stuff that is source materials. You can read it for yourself. And you can also see what's really happening in the wider Anglican world. And folks, after a really dull summer, it's really picking up.
It is. Well, let's be honest here. One news source broke the story of the new Archbishop of Canterbury. Here in America, it was Anglican Ink.
Well, what we did is we were the first ones, and I don't want viewers to get the wrong impression, but when the bookmakers closed the books on Rowan Williams, on Justin Welby, because the odds shifted, I don't want you to think that I spent my weekends over at the bookie hall and I noticed them changing the chalkboard. No, I wasn't in Vegas. I was working in church on Sunday. But we were the first ones out in print with the story about the bookmakers changing on Justin Welby. And later that night, the major papers followed.
Right. And that's what we do. We have broken, at least 6 or 7 stories over the years since Anglican Ink. Has been in business. And that's part of what we do. We also provide much more context in our articles than you would find in newspapers or other online media, because we're trying to we're halfway between newspaper and magazine length in our content. We want to give you everything you need to know, but not put you to sleep. It's not bedtime reading, and it's not at your desk at work reading. It's something you're going to sit down and say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
See, and one of the important things that you'll not get in a secular news story is the context and the Anglican church background. In other words, the fact that Justin Welby, for instance, attended Holy Trinity Brompton Church would pass most secular journalists by. I mean, okay, so what? He attended this church in London. But that the fact that this is the home of the Alpha movement, that Nicky Gumbel, a fellow Etonian, went there, that he came to faith, allows us to say this is the first Alpha Archbishop. Now, there's some good religion journalists who report that, but most of the stuff that you will see on the wire services and see in your local newspaper, they don't do that. They don't understand that. They don't have a feel for it.
Not that we're the best, we're just trying to be the best.
We are the best, Kevin.
Okay, all right, we're the best. I know that, you know that. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and you've been watching episode 56 of Anglican Unscripted.
There we go. Three, two. I got a belch coming on too here. Oh boy. That was not bad. That's amateur time. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 56. I'm looking good today, but George is a little pixelated. His camera died, and that means Anglican TV viewers need to help make him look better. Although you got that George Bond look going on, not bad.
George Bond?
George Bond. James Bond, George. What's going on? No big deal. I'm Kevin Carlson.
Going up and down again.
Yeah, just let it be, because it normally goes away. Maybe it's the balance of your camera. Just try tilting your camera a little so that the balance, it may be trying to fit the gravity thing would be an issue. All right. Well, we're still recording. There. Okay, that's good. Just don't touch. Okay? Don't touch. What?
You're at the center stage, and I'm off in the corner.
Yeah?
So when I look, so I feel like I'm cross-eyed. If I'm trying to get one eye, go.
Well, yeah, but I always put you right under the cut. I drag you under the camera so that I'm looking right at you. So, but I'm pro. Take my notes over here. 3, 2, 1.